Have you ever wondered if you're staying in a relationship for the right reasons? Well, in this episode, we're going to explore that question and provide you with tools to make the best decision for you and your family. Today, we're having an honest conversation about love, parenting, and personal growth, and whether or not you should stay or go in your relationship. Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy. I'm your host, Kendra Nielson, and today we're tackling a challenging but crucial topic that comes up with a lot of my clients. And I thought that this is a good time to bring it up on the podcast. How do I know if it's time to end my marriage or relationship? Now, this is a question that comes up a lot with my clients, and I'm kind of surprised that I haven't talked specifically to this yet. This is a question that many of us face at some point in our lives, and it's especially complex when kids are involved. So let's jump into this topic. I'm going to give you guidance from professionals and discuss how you can navigate this difficult decision yourself. I want to start with a story that might resonate with some of you. I have one client that's been married for about 12 years, and she has 2 children. And she's been feeling very unfulfilled and disconnected with her husband for years. Well before she came to me, she talked about how she's been feeling like this for so long, but she kept pushing those feelings aside, just thinking maybe it was a phase or something that everyone goes through. And then one day when she was helping her daughter with some homework, she realized in that moment that she couldn't remember the last time she felt truly happy, especially when it came to her marriage. And this sparked some major self-reflection and some really tough decisions, but we'll come back to that story in just a minute. John and Julie Gottman are the forerunners when it comes to couples counseling, couples therapy. And I want to share one thing that John Gottman said. He said, the difference between happy and unhappy couples is the balance between positive and negative interactions during conflict. There is a very specific ratio that makes love last. And this is something that I've talked about many times, but this is known as the Gottman ratio. And he says that for every negative interaction during conflict, a stable and happy marriage has 5 or more positive interactions. So if you're wondering if you have a great marriage, if that ratio is about there, 5 or more positive to 1 negative, then this is a very happy, successful marriage. But if it's on the other side, it might be a sign that your relationship might not be as healthy as you imagined, and maybe deeper reflection is required and couples counseling or more work or even exploring if it's time to end this relationship. And I don't say that lightly. I never do for any of my clients. But many of these clients, the more that I work with, the more I realize some of these are so unhealthy and everyone is struggling so much with very little changing. And almost everybody in that room is wanting this to stop. And we're going to explore if this is you. So let's talk about signs that it might be time to consider ending the relationship. Do you have a persistent feeling of unhappiness or dissatisfaction? Do you lack emotional or physical intimacy? Do you have constant criticism or contempt for your partner? Do you have an inability to communicate effectively? And is there repeated infidelity or a betrayal of trust? Now, I want to say the other side of it too, because I do believe that marriages are worth fighting for, especially if both sides are willing to work. Here are some of the signs for one that's worth saving. Both partners are willing to work on the relationship. I would say that's first and foremost. The second one is you still have positive feelings and respect for each other. And the next one is there are periods of happiness and connection, even if they're infrequent, and you share common values and goals. So when I read those 2 things, which category do you think that you're in? Hopefully you feel like your marriage is worth saving, and those last 4 things that I shared are you. And that is a beautiful sign because so much can happen in a relatively short time in couples counseling. So take that extra step so that you and your family can thrive in ways they haven't been for potentially years. It does require humility though, and I know that can be hard if you're not used to going to somebody else and getting feedback in areas where you feel very vulnerable and likely hurt in many ways. I want to talk quickly about the impact on children because this is such a big part of deciding whether or not you should stay or go. So when kids are involved, the decision becomes even more complex. Dr. Tammy Nelson talked about involving kids in the decision-making on whether or not to stay or go, and she says this: be honest with your kids, but avoid burdening them with adult problems. That's important. And the next thing she says is listen to their concerns and feelings, and then reassure them that both parents still love them regardless of the outcome. Those 3 things can be very hard for my clients as we talk about them and make sure that we are not putting any of that decision on them, but getting their feedback, understanding their problems, not trying to fix things, but validating your children's concerns, hearing them out, comforting them is such a key part of that. Giving them that reassurance, because this is hard for everybody, whether you stay or go. So going back to earlier when I talked about my client, she actually decided to have an age-appropriate conversation with her kids about the challenges in her marriage. Now, she wasn't dumping on them, but she did have that conversation and was more transparent so they could better understand. And she was really surprised by their insightfulness and how they'd already sensed that tension in the home. It was not a surprise to them. And they even picked up on a lot more than she had realized about what some of those issues were. Now, she didn't overburden them and give them too much information, but enough for them to have a better understanding and even peace about her decision. The next part I want to talk about is learning to trust your inner voice. So many of us shut that voice down when we are not very familiar with it. But if we learn to trust that intuition, there can be so much more peace. Now, this can be really complicated for those that are separating from a narcissist because we learn to doubt that voice for so many years. So if you're not sure how to trust that intuition, there might be more layers to that. So just be aware of that. But many of us, especially parents, become so focused on other people's needs that we lose touch with that inner voice. But there's some simple things that you can do to reconnect with that intuition. And that is meditating and quieting that outside noise, especially during these crucial crossroads when you're trying to determine if you should stay or go in a relationship. It's also very important to journal. I have a friend that's gone through a couple divorces, and she regularly goes back and reads those journal entries, and it helps her recognize how much growth there has been and how she doesn't doubt her decisions because she's seen how far she's come, and she's so happy in her current stage because she remembers that. And she doesn't go back and do it over and over again to stay in that drama of the past, but to be reminded of all the good in her life now and how that was a courageous, important step for her. And the last very important thing you can do is get a counselor. I know I say that a lot, but it's true. Listening to this podcast will very much help, or reading other mental health and wellness books, but you really can't shortchange that personal counseling that will help you when you're making very difficult decisions that impact you and your entire family. One of my clients had been ignoring his gut feeling about his marriage for years, and as we worked together in therapy, he was able to learn to reconnect with his intuition and make decisions that aligned with that inner intuition and his true self. Now, I did not tell him what to do, but he learned to listen to that voice himself. Dr. Susan Heitler said this: "The goal is not to save the marriage at all costs, but to figure out what's best for everyone involved." And I love that. We so often think, no, you save the marriage at all costs. But then I'm reminded of when my mom was married to a man for 12 years, and it was so hard for all of us. And it was not a thriving environment on so many levels. And eventually they did divorce, and we were so grateful. It just felt like it could have been done years earlier. And yet we learned from that experience too. But I wonder if sometimes we hang on so tightly because we feel it like we have no other choice and it's the only thing to do. You preserve that marriage at all costs. And yet the cost is so high. And if other people are hurting so much, maybe it is not worth it. Now, I want to give you just a very brief assessment here to help you evaluate your relationship. Just 5 simple questions. Do you feel respected and valued by your spouse or partner? Can you communicate openly about your needs and concerns? Do you trust your partner or your spouse? Do you feel emotionally and physically safe in your relationship? Are you and your partner willing to work on improving the relationship? So if you answered no to most of these questions, it might be time to consider whether this relationship is really healthy for you and your family. And that is a decision only you can make, which requires tuning into that intuition and doing some deep work likely with a therapist. Now, if you are at that stage and considering separation or divorce, here are some simple strategies to ease that transition for your kids. Maintain that consistency in routines and rules across both households. Avoid speaking negatively about your ex in front of the kids. Encourage that open communication and really validate your child's feelings. And please consider family therapy to help everyone adjust. It is not about pointing fingers. It's not about blaming anyone. It's just about helping people transition to something that's really difficult. All right, now I just want to recap a few of those main points today. There is no one-size-fits-all answer to this on whether or not you should end your relationship. It really is about your intuition. Please consider both the signs of salvaging the relationship and those indicating it might be time to move on. Your kids' well-being should be a priority, but staying in an unhealthy relationship isn't necessarily what's best for them. Learn to trust your intuition to make this difficult decision. And for some reason, if you are unable to access that, that might be a time to get help. The right therapist can help provide that valuable guidance and support when you might not always trust that inner voice quite yet. I know that it is not an easy decision when it comes to knowing if it's time to end a relationship, especially when there's kids involved and it's deeply personal and complex. It is okay to take your time. It's okay to seek help. It's okay to prioritize your well-being and that of your family. Trust yourself, be kind to yourself, and know that whatever decision you make, you have the strength to move forward. Thank you for joining me today on Fulfillment Therapy. I appreciate you showing up. I appreciate you leaving reviews and supporting us and sharing this episode with friends and family. I know so many of you have done that, and you've shared what you love about it or offered feedback that has really helped improve this podcast. So thank you for all the things that you do to help support Fulfillment Therapy. Until next time, this is Kendra Nielson wishing you that clarity, that courage, and that fulfillment on your journey as you potentially face those challenges yourself. I'll see you back here every Monday and Thursday with a new episode. Until then. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, chances are someone else would too. Would you take 30 seconds to share this with a friend who's looking for greater family fulfillment? And while you're sharing, tell me what you think about the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It refuels me when I hear this podcast is helping you, no matter what your house or your hair looks like. I'll meet you back here every Monday and Thursday morning for more episodes. Until then.